position. It's Sam Bird! Oh no, that's absolutely huge! Red flag!
That was crazy.
Across the line comes Mitch Evans to win in Rome.
That's 4, baby.
Yes!
Good morning, hello and welcome to round 14 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. It is qualifying time and we are live from Rome, a city where 2,000 years ago, one of the most popular sports to watch was chariot racing. Well, yesterday's Formula E race was befitting of that ancient spectacle. We started with 22 cars, we finished with just 12. Thankfully, all drivers walked away unharmed. The same could not be said for the cars. Many of these teams working tirelessly overnight with one objective: get a car to the start line. But how will they fare in qualifying? We're about to find out with reserve Apps Cooper driver Kelvin van der Linde and former Andretti driver Ollie Askew. Kelvin, yesterday, I mean, it was all about unreal drama.
Yeah, it was absolute madness. I was sitting with Ollie in the commentator box and we just felt like almost like disbelief really for all the drivers, what they were experiencing. Great to see a lot of them walking away unharmed, all healthy. A lot of the cars were obviously in pieces, and just great to see the safety standards we have nowadays in Formula E.
And Ollie, the upshot of that, the drivers probably rested well last night. The same couldn't be said for these teams working tirelessly.
Exactly right. Each of these teams down the grid here somehow affected by that crash in turn 6. And there was rumors of Jaguar Racing, a team that's looking to sweep this weekend with Mitch Evans, having stayed up all night fixing the car of Sam Bird, which created that incident.
Let's just remind ourselves of that incident because Kelvin, I mean, it was actually frightening to watch at times.
It really was. We're going on board here with Sam Bird, a very tricky corner turn 6. The drivers have been complaining all weekend how sketchy it is through there. Unfortunately caught Sam out. We're going to see a lot of the drivers immediately yellow flag. It's so hard. It's blind around this corner and you really just commit to your corner. Edo Mortara straight into the side of Sam Bird. You really, it's a 50-50 which way you go and whether you make it through or not.
Yeah, riding on board here shortly with Sebastian Buemi. Massive hit, as you see here. He had no chance to react as it's a blind corner, like you said, Kelvin. It's a huge testament to the safety of these cars. Each of these drivers able to walk away unscathed. I'm sure they're going to be a little sore this morning, but now they're focused on what's the task ahead. And
the task for us is to focus on the championship. And in terms of the standings, what an unbelievable performance from Mitch Evans, once again proving that he is the king of Rome. But we now have a new championship leader, Kelvin.
Yeah, Nick Cassidy doing a great job. It seems that he's able to avoid all the drama. Turn 1, as we saw with Edo Mortara lunging down the inside of Seb Buemi, it just opened the floodgates for Nick Cassidy, and that's what you got to do if you want to become world champion.
Well, let's find out from the man himself, who's with Alan McNish now.
And I'm here with Nick Cassidy, championship leader. Another stunning podium yesterday. How was it for you?
Yeah, obviously it was a great result for us yesterday. Tough for the team though, losing a car. 2 out of our 4 in the family, so great day on one hand with the 1-2 and pretty hard on the other.
Qualifying, you came through again. Didn't qualify quite as high up as you would maybe have expected, but we've seen that from you in Portland, where you won 2nd place yesterday. What about this afternoon? You're going to need to maybe have a better one than you had yesterday?
Yeah, I think we were quite good in quali. I just didn't really get that first lap on the board, and obviously there was a red, so that one lap was very crucial, right? So, look, no excuses. Just got to, every lap counts around here. There can be a red or a yellow at any time. That's motorsport, and got to do the job when it counts.
So you feel you've got a bit of quali pace there, and you've also got the race pace. Average of 14.3 points per race over the last 3 races to go. What's your expectations?
I think, to be honest, we've got to keep that scoring up, and we have the tools to do so. I think we have a good quali car today. We seem strong just now on 1 lap in FP, so we do the job when it counts and go for the race again.
So is it about the team going to this point? Is it about the car? Is it about you? Or is it about the mentality and the grit and determination of a Kiwi?
I think it's about everything. The one thing with me, man, is I'm really pushing the development of all 4 cars, and I feel like sometimes I lose out from that because every FP I'm looking for new ways, and obviously if something works, 3 guys go bolted on, and in the end it's pushing us forward, but it comes to a point in the year where I've got to maybe start to focus on myself and put the car in the right window for that qualifying lap.
Well, Nick Cassidy, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of grit and determination coming from you today. Have a good one.
Thanks, man. Cheers.
So Nick Cassidy there, a driver that was managed to avoid that incident and get a good position and a good result for him and the team. There were many drivers, however, that couldn't avoid that incident. We're going to have a look, a bit of an explanation about what happened overnight here, because what followed that incident overnight was probably one, if not the biggest repair job we have ever seen in Formula E. A huge collaborative and community effort from across the paddock to get as many cars as possible on the paddock as possible. Now, if we just look here at the level of damage of Eduardo Mortara's car, and this is what the teams had to contend with. As Oliver said earlier, some staying up as late as early as 4 a.m. this morning to get it done. There's been a huge sharing of tubs from across the paddock. You know, it's kind of like underneath these bodywork, it's like Frankenstein's monster, just a slightly better looking one in a Formula E car, of course. But yes, the level of collaboration and community spirit here to make these cars get on the paddock and get into FP3 and get into qualifying now, nothing short of remarkable. And we're looking forward to seeing more action today.
Remarkable is the word. The transformations are just absolutely out of this world, and we're grateful for it because we are minutes away from qualifying kicking off. And Kelvin, I mean, let's talk first of all about Mitch Evans. A superb qualifying yesterday, superb race. FP3 was dominant. Is he the one to look out for today?
100%. We saw a similar case with Max Gunther in Jakarta. Once the car is working, once it's in its window, you just fine-tuning, and that's all he'll be doing. He's got the driver confidence. He knows he can put the lap together when he needs to. And from the team side, they're fine-tuning their energy profile, their car setup maybe slightly, but there's not big steps they need to make. They know what they can do. They just need to execute.
Well, Mitch was pole sitter. Nick Cassidy, now the new championship leader, didn't even make duels. But in FP3, he was much better. Will he perform better in qualifying today?
Look, the positive side for Nick is that he can look at the data from Mitch Evans, who has been absolutely dominating this weekend. They say they share the same powertrain, and they're right next to each other in the garages. So I'm sure that Nick's been up late studying to try and figure out what's so special about the car of Mitch Evans and trying to figure out what Mitch is doing around this track that's working so well. So as far as the championship goes for Nick Cassidy, he's currently leading after yesterday, and yet right now he just needs to have a strong finish today. Don't do anything special. It's always going to come down to the last race in London.
So to be clear to the layman, Kelvin, you actually kind of real learnings having a second day on the same track, having learned from the day before?
100% for Nick Cassidy. Obviously, you also have to say yesterday was chaotic in qualifying with the yellow flags. I hope for his case that he will not have that to deal with today, and I think if he can just execute his ideal qualifying lap, he'll be up there.
We saw drama with Sam Bird in the race. We saw drama with Sam Bird in qualifying. Will it be a repeat here in Rome? All we want is the best possible action to get underway, which undoubtedly it will do here in Rome. So let's hand to our commentary team of Tom Brooks and Alan McNish.
It's round 14 of the 2023 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. We're here in Rome for the second of our races this weekend. A doubleheader in the penultimate round of the season. You can see here the first group of qualifying 11 drivers taken to this one from each of the different teams, as you can see. Well, a couple in there as well. Nick Cassidy, Mitch Evans, Jean-Eric Vergne, Antonio Felix Costa, Sam Bird in the mix, Stoffel Van Dorn, Sacha Fenestras, Lucas de Grassi, Dan Ticktum, Sergio Sessi Camara and Robin Freins. Only 4 places, though, up for grabs in the duels. That is the most important point here. And this is an absolutely stacked first group. It's really hard to call which of the 4 drivers are here, Alan, are going to make it through.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very tight for that, and so therefore I think it's going to be about execution of it. They all want to get a lap in early. That was something that Nick Cassidy fell foul of yesterday. Didn't get his lap in. Then there was the yellow flag, and that scuppered his chances towards the end. And so therefore I'm pretty sure the championship leader wants to make sure he's at least in contention with his countryman Mitch Evans.
Yeah, it was a fantastic performance from Nick Cassidy in the Envision yesterday. Second place for him at the checkered flag, taking over the championship lead from Jake Dennis. Coming into this weekend, Dennis had a 1-point advantage over the Kiwi. After round 13 yesterday, it was 6 points to the good for Nick Cassidy. You can see at the bottom left corner of your screen, that's the Formula E predictor. Get in touch with that and see who you think is going to make it through to the duels and which of the drivers are going to come out on top within the quarters, the semis, and of course in the finals later on here this morning. Weather really, really hot here today, about 3 degrees warmer in terms of air temperature. What's it like out on track, Alan?
Track temperature 42 degrees. When we finished free practice earlier on, it was 30 degrees Celsius. And the track temperature is going to ramp up like nothing on earth from now on. That means it's really tough for the tyre. At the moment, they're in 300 kilowatts. They're in race power mode. But then later on, if they do get past the group stages, go into the duels, and then into the semis and the final, they'll be at 350 kilowatt. That's when they've got to really think about that tyre temperature.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be a really exciting qualifying session. We just rode on board with Sam Bird very briefly a couple of moments ago. Bird was the driver who started the chain reaction of incidents which brought out the red flag for a very prolonged amount of time. It actually ended up being the longest race in Formula E history in an hour, 37 minutes and 2 seconds. That's that flag period. Ultimately, 21 drivers started that race. Only 13 took the checkered flag, with a plethora of drivers going out. And interestingly, for the top 4 drivers in the championship, all of their teammates ended up out of the race. So they had no rear gunner, no drivers to use in terms of team tactics, which made things very interesting out on track. Just looking here at the DS Penske, this is John-Eric Byrne. We just saw into the garage a couple of moments ago with Oliver Turvey. Byrne winding himself up for a first flying lap here in this session, Alan.
Yeah, as he drops down into turn 3 underneath the underpass. That's where the start line is, which is offset to the finish line. So this, in reality, in race start, will be the first corner before they loop uphill through turn 5, which is flat out, then feathering the throttle in full power mode in turn 6, where all of the incidents were yesterday. Through there, very bumpy, cambered on the road, and really tricky. And then the car takes off there just before the heavy braking and bumpy entry to turn 7. Now into the next part of the circuit. This is all 90 degrees left and right. Before that, it's been fast and flowing. Now it's stop start. Now you need a car that turns into the corner, get onto the throttle, changes direction. See there, Verne just the rear stepping a little out a little as he went onto the power, a little bit of oversteer. And then he comes into the chicane. That's caught a few people out earlier on. Rennie Rast had to abort it. We saw one of the Mahindras hitting the barrier there in free practice this morning. A 90 right, and then coming in towards the obelisk, which is the long left-hander with a beautiful statue behind it.
An absolutely superb part of the circuit. That's where the activation zone is for attack mode. We'll see that being used later on in the race here this afternoon. You can see John-Eric Byrne continuing on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That's his teammate, Stoffel Van Dorn. Points once again eluding Van Dorn yesterday afternoon. Qualified down in 12th, finished 11th when the checkered flag came out. It has not been a particularly brilliant season for the reigning champion. Down in 11th place in the standings, as John-Eric Byrne looking like he's on a bit of a flyer coming through the final sector. Goes up to a 140. Let's see what his teammate is going to do. Van Dorn, as he comes through turn 19 and across the timing line, just winding himself up then clearly for a first attempt at a flying lap here. Antonio Felix da Costa, he was a driver who was very much involved in strife yesterday afternoon. Had a big impact going underneath Sebastian Buemi's Envision car. Huge effort from the team. They got a spare tub, I understand, from Neo. Got that car rebuilt overnight, as did a lot of the teams. And I was down talking to one of the Jaguar mechanics. I said to him, have you actually been able to go to bed? He said, no, we've had an hour's sleep straight back on here and straight back into racing conditions today.
And there on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, we've got Mitch Evans, yesterday's, I would say, dominating driver, pole position, fastest lap, and then the race victory. A beautiful view, actually, over the left front wheel as he drops down the hill through turn 2 and then pops into the top of the tights, but just beaten by his compatriot Nick Cassidy.
Yeah, that Jaguar powertrain really working nicely around here. Envision, of course, with the Jaguar powertrain. Likewise, naturally, the two Jaguars of Mitch Evans and Sam Bird. Not a bad lap so far from Sergio Sette Camara. Got a good points haul with 8th place. That's only his 2nd points finish of the 2023 season so far. And he'll be looking to try and build on that, but with a full grid of 22 drivers expected to take to the field here this afternoon, it's going to be a bit of a hard task. Meanwhile, contrasting fortunes for Mahindra. They have had an absolute stinker of a weekend here. Software issues thwarting them on Friday. Quite clearly some issues under braking that we've seen both drivers locking up on several occasions and going off at turn 4 and turn 7.
Yeah, and they've had the car switch off on them, so they've been sitting at the side, control alt delete. Here's Steve.
Yeah, FPK derate critical for half the lap. Really affects the final sector.
Copy. Okay, we've got something we can do to fix that in the next run.
Front powertrain that recuperates energy. Derating means basically it's getting too hot, and that's something that Sam Bird was complaining about in free practice this morning. It's the second time we've heard it. It's very sensitive around here because it is super hot anyway, and it's actually having to do a lot of work, especially from the race runs, and the management of it through a race is going to be important. But for Sam Bird, we have to remember this is a complete new car. You know, the one that was for yesterday basically was for the bin. You could roll it up and stick it in the bin straight away. And so therefore, from the team's perspective, there's a lot of small adaptations that maybe have a big effect. And clearly they think that they've got a solution for it.
Yeah, the drivers then coming into the pit lane now at the end of this lap. This is the end of their first run in this session. Currently, with 5 minutes remaining, it's Cassidy, Verne, Evans and Stoffel Van Dorn. Drivers will come into the pit lane. They'll get a new set of boots on their car, get themselves out for one last run here in this session. At the moment, it of course is Cassidy with that 0.3 of a second advantage. Let's have a look here at Robin Frijns in the Abt Cupra. His teammate Nico Muller getting a stonking result yesterday with a top 6 finish, equaling their total point tally from the season in just one race. And look at him fighting the car through turn 6 there.
Yeah, that's exactly through the area where there was so many crashes yesterday, and you saw the speed of Robin's hands on the wheel as the car danced around and he had an oversteer. And yeah, Thomas Biermeier just replicating that, but to be honest, I would say that Robin was doing it 3 times faster. And that's why Robin is so good in these difficult conditions, and also why he's so good in wet conditions, because he's got sensational feel and speed of reflex.
So a lot of drivers now coming back into the garage here, Alan, with just over 4.5 minutes remaining. Talk us through the process. What's going on inside the garage here now?
Well, first of all, they're changing tyres. They've got 2 sets of tyres, and then they change them to try to alternate and find the right option. You want to make sure that you have the cooler tyres on the car and properly prepared from there with the temperature, because as you go into your qualifying lap, tyre temperature and also brake temperatures are very, very critical. And so that's a thing that they're managing, and they've got the experience from yesterday in free practice. The other thing they're doing is just maybe making some small adaptations to the software, as well as maybe some small suspension changes. But it has to be minimal, because you've only got 3-4 minutes, and so therefore it's not as if you can do major suspension changes.
Yeah, we know that Sam Bird, of course, his team are going to be doing a couple of software changes to the car in preparation for his final run in the session, down in 9th quickest at the moment. This is the driver eye view for Lucas Di Grassi. He stopped on track during free practice this morning, was able to get the car back up and running, get himself back into pit lane, but he was one of the unfortunate casualties in the race yesterday. DNF on the board for the former Formula E champion, and he'll be hoping for better fortunes here for round 14 later on this afternoon in the sweltering sunshine at Rome. So final preparations taking place in the DS Penske garage, and also on the right-hand side of the Jaguar Racing garage as well. This is Sam Bird, now looking at his view in the cockpit. The halo just in front, that was crucially important yesterday in that incident that we saw.
And there you see the data on the steering wheel that Sam has got available to him that tells him all the things from the state of charge, the amount of energy that's in the battery, the temperatures, the minimums, as well as you see some of the drivers already going out, and therefore that'll have a lap time predictor as well that gives him an understanding of where he is relative to his fastest lap, and that allows him to judge the risk, especially in that final sector.
Let's have a look here at Dan Ticktum. Oh, clipping the wall going through turn 3. Sorry, that's the final corner.
Yeah,
turn 3 it is, yeah, just before the start-finish line, and lucky to get away with that one.
Ticktum, everybody is out apart from Sacha Fenestrez, who has not been out. He had a battery problem earlier on this morning. We should note that he was super quick yesterday, in fact quickest in his group section, and led the race at one point, and he's still stuck in the pits.
Well, Cassidy was the first driver out on track. You can see the Envision car there, quite a fair way up the road from the likes of John-Eric Verne and Mitch Evans and Sam Bird, etc. So let's see whether that proves to be beneficial for him. Why do you think he's gone so early compared to everybody else?
Well, because yesterday he was not early and he got caught by the yellow flag, so he wants to make sure that he's actually in there and controlling the environment. So he won't be affected by yellow flags, but potentially someone behind them will. And so therefore it's a risk management. He's already got that lap time in the pocket that he basically missed out on yesterday. He knows he's in the game, and so from his point of view, it is a case about controlling the risk and controlling everybody else.
Driver stating that the track is a lot more grippy than it was this time yesterday. That's to be expected. It's been a lot more rubbered in. Track temperature still steadily increasing over the course of this one. It was, what, 42 at the start? It's got up to nearly 45 here at the conclusion of this Group A qualifying session. Just to remind you, top 4 drivers go through into the duels. We've got the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and then we'll have in the fight for pole position the final coming up later on here this morning as Nick Cassidy winds himself up for his first flying lap in the final run.
Final flying lap as well, because with 50 seconds, this is going to be it. This is where we're going to see all the drivers crossing the line and whether they're going to be able to defeat the time that Nick Cassidy has already done as he now drops down the hill through turn 3, under the bridge, into the difficult braking of turn 4 before going up to the high-speed section 5, 6, in towards turn 7 in the middle sector.
Cassidy here looking pretty good in the first couple of corners through the blind turn number 5. Fastest overall in the first sector here for Nick Cassidy. Jean-Eric Vergne, meanwhile, in the bottom right-hand side of your picture.
And Vergne second fastest at the moment, so you got first and second in the group stages so far in your picture there, as Vergne's coming up to that turn 7, the heavy braking bumpy, gets it into the apex.
Yeah, really nice there for Jean-Eric Vergne. Let's see whether he's going to be able to try and upset Nick Cassidy's run in this race. So looking good in that first sector. That's actually been bettered since by Mitch Evans, who sits 3rd quickest at the moment. So one and done. One final flying lap for all of these drivers. They're all out on track in the last stages of the session as the checkered flag is out. We look forwards from the back of Nick Cassidy's Envision car, threading the eye of a needle as he heads through this final sector. And is the Kiwi going to be able to improve? It wasn't a particularly brilliant second sector for him. He'll be hoping that he can improve in that final one. Slight bit of wobble there coming out in towards the last couple of corners into the 90-degree right, then the left. This is the final corner of the track, or heading into the final corner of the track in a few moments' time of turn number 19. And Nick Cassidy sitting at the top of the pile with a 38.8. Is he going to be able to improve as he comes to the checkered flag? He is. He goes nearly 0.3 of a second faster.
And no one's really challenging in the first and second sector. Evans is coming through now, and he'll drop himself, I'm sure, into the game. Yeah, goes second quickest, but can't beat Cassidy.
Jean-Eric Vergne with a really strong lap time. De Grassi with an absolute flyer at the end of the session in the Mahindra, goes up into 4th fastest, knocks out Stoffel van Dorn for the time being. Sam Bird looking pretty good down in 10th place at the moment, last in the standings here. Is he going to be able to improve as Antonio Felix da Costa now up into 3rd place, puts Jean-Eric Vergne onto the bubble. Through the final corner here comes Sam Bird. It's all or nothing as he comes to the line with the checkered flag out, and he goes fastest overall. Brilliant lap time for Sam Bird, and right when it mattered, both Jags through into the duel.
My goodness, so therefore you've got Dan Tickton that's dropped himself into 3rd position as well. That puts Evans 4th and on the bubble. Da Costa is out, so the wingman from Wehrlein, one of the championship contenders, is not going to be in the duels. And then Jean-Eric Vergne is out as well, the guy that finished in 5th place yesterday.
Disaster for DS Penske, both drivers out in the group stages of qualifying. What a lap from Dan Tickton. I was so busy focusing on Sam Bird's efforts that I completely missed the brilliant lap. An absolutely fantastic performance from him. He'll be elated with that, making it through into the duels here this morning. And yesterday in the group stage, he only qualified down in 18th.
Yeah, he was not really hooking it up yesterday. There's quite a few things happened, but there his middle sector was pretty much equal to Sam Bird, who had the fastest middle sector of anybody. Very strong performance. But we've seen a lot of that really strong performances qualifying. The points, though, are a little bit more difficult to take for Neo, so they've got to take advantage when they can. One just comment, Fenestraz, he did not get out, so therefore he will start at the back. Obviously, a technical problem that stopped him from running earlier on in free practice has continued into qualifying.
Yeah, the team's focusing their efforts on Norman Natter. This is Robin Freins going off on the run up into turn 7. We've seen that so many times here this weekend with the drivers pushing the edge of adhesion. The Abt Cupra driver sadly not making it through into the duels. You can see there, just quite unlucky. In fact, I think that was a little bit earlier on in the lap, wasn't it? That was actually down into turn 4, yep. And was able to get the car spun round and back onto track. Did bring out the yellow flag, though, briefly as a result. So So the Cooper team now watching on as our focus shifts over to the second group of drivers. These are the drivers, though, that make it through into the duels. Sam Bird, Nick Cassidy, Dan Ticktum and Mitch Evans through into the quarterfinals. Sadly, we say goodbye to Felix da Costa, Vern de Grassi, Seth Camera, Stoffel van Dorn, Robin Freins and Sasha Fenestraz. Sadly not being able to set a time in the Nissan. Let's go down to Saunders then, who is in the paddock, and find out an update after our Group A qualifying session.
So I'm here with Jaguar team principal James Barkley. Now, as far as things go, that is a pretty good start to the day.
Yeah, and particularly proud of Sam kind of being able to turn around after the big accident yesterday. His first proper competitive session really, and to go fast to the group. That's a real testament to him and the team and the work we've done to turn the car around.
Both cars into the qualifying duels, similar to yesterday. Massive now in terms of making this day work for you in terms of the championship, but also just to touch upon the work that went in behind the scenes. We heard it was a very late or even early morning for the team rebuilding Sam's car.
Yeah, obviously first things first, the group stage is one thing. Now we have the duels, so trying to get obviously our best finishing position is the next focus as part of quali. So very much quali's still a job to do. But yes, a huge effort last night. It was a bit of a war zone up and down the paddock here last night with a number of teams changing cars, having to build new cars. You normally want a week to do that back in the factory, so to do that overnight is a huge effort from everyone involved, and it's particularly pleasing and proud of the team when you not only turn around the car, get it back out, but it's quick.
We're looking forward to seeing what they can do in the duels.
Thanks a lot, thank you.
Thanks, James.
Well, 3 out of 4 cars being from Jaguar powertrains. We can see Dan Ticktum behind us here, delivering the absolute goods right at the end there. But Nick Cassidy, first of all, we obviously heard about Sam Bird and Mitch Evans there. Nick Cassidy has turned things around in 24 hours.
Yeah, he has. Ollie mentioned earlier, he obviously had the opportunity to look at some data last night, obviously helped a bit, but I think the big thing is just getting a clear run. Looking at the qualifying, he had 2 clear runs there with good tyres, and I think that really made the difference for him. Both of our championship contenders are in, so I think all according to plan for both of them.
And in terms of Jaguar, amazing turnaround mentally for Sam Bird to do what he managed to do then.
Oh, very good job by him. And in motorsport, you have to have a very short memory because, the highs are high and the lows are low. And Sam Bird has experienced a tough time there yesterday with that incident, as we saw earlier. So great job by him to turn things around. And his job now today is to support Mitch Evans.
And Mitch Evans, it's the other side of that story. He was unbelievable yesterday, but he's still got the job done. He's crossed the threshold.
Yeah, he's in there with P4, probably just not a clear run. He'll hope to do a bit more now in the semi-finals and quarterfinals.
Absolutely. We can head back to now Group B for qualifying.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, lads. Cheers for giving us an update down in the paddock. Sasha Fenestraz, we understand, a battery change down at Nissan. That's why he did not take part in Group A qualifying.
Yeah, but that was something that I would have expected, honestly, because it was finished at the end of free practice 3, so possibly there's another issue as well.
Well, here are the drivers that are taking part in Group B. As you can see, Dennis Wehrlein, Gunther, Sebastian Buemi, Jake Hughes did manage to get out onto the grid for the race yesterday, and his teammate Rene Rast DNF'd as well. So this is going to be really exciting, this one. Jake Dennis, you'd expect, will have the pace. Pascal Wehrlein has had something of an up and down weekend thus far, and he'll be hoping for a stronger result to try and turn his fortunes around here on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And this is Hughes, who had a crash yesterday in free practice.
And scenario 8, we are push next lap, double push.
Double push, and that's 2 push laps then, isn't it, for Jake Hughes? And, well, he wants to get himself onto the grid. I had a quick chat with him whilst he was walking through the paddock earlier and just said, what's the plan for this one? He said, just go out, try and get as much data as we can and put in a stronger performance for the Neon McLaren team. They had a really tricky day with Rene Rast and his DNF yesterday. I understand that was due to a software-related issue, so they've not had a particularly lucky weekend here in Rome.
No, missed out with Hughes after the crash and wasn't able to have the car repaired for the race itself, and so therefore that mileage that Hughes has missed personally is very important for him, and so therefore if he does make it through, then it'll be a pretty sensational job in my opinion. Buemi on your bottom right hand side, one of the luckiest people yesterday after he was involved in that incident, and did a very good job this morning, and thanked the team, I would say very humbly on the radio, for all of the work and effort that they put in to get a new car rebuilt and back onto the grid for today.
As you say, incredibly fortunate and a testament to the safety of these Gen 3 Formula E cars. Actually, Seb Buemi's first retirement of the 2023 season yesterday, and envisions first retirement of the year as well. So incredibly unlucky, and will be hoping to get himself as far up the grid as he possibly can with the first flying laps now coming into this session. Track temperatures still steadily increasing, now up to just over 45 degrees. Yesterday, before we got racing underway, it was up to 60 degrees. It is absolutely baking hot in the sunshine here in Rome as Buemi rounds turn 19, the final corner. Goes to break the beam and goes to the top of the pile by nearly half a second from Jake Hughes.
Yeah, certainly a decent first lap from Buemi, because 38.4 was the quickest lap of Bird in the first part of group, and that's already pretty much been equalled by Sebastian Buemi. Hughes drops himself into second. Muller in third, who was a superhero in my opinion yesterday, dragging the App Cupra into top 6 position.
Yeah, may have been kicking and screaming that App Cupra, but he managed to get it really up where it wasn't expected to be, because, as I said, Mahindra-powered machines have had an absolute shocker of a weekend thus far, and Muller was really on it. Really impressive performance for him to hold his own against a very strong contingent of drivers that he was battling with for 6th.
As we look at Dennis coming through the final sector, just a note, Hughes is doing that double push, and he is the fastest in the first sector on his second lap as well. So there's definitely a gain for him as he's trying that particular strategy, as Dennis pops himself to the top of the timesheets and beats Sam Bird's time from Group 1.
Frustration yesterday for Jake Dennis with the team. Felt that they could have handled the strategy a little better. There were so many variables going on in the race. Of course, with that red flag really putting the cat amongst the pigeons, and there was obvious frustration there. Felt he missed out on an opportunity. Ended up in 4th place. As Hughes here really pushing the edge of adhesion on those Hankook tyres.
Yeah, he is. In the last sector, this is where it looks to be struggling, as if that second push lap. You saw the rear of the car floating through the corner as he drops himself into 3rd. But definitely the final sector was not as quick as the previous. So it looks like there's a little bit of tuning to be done to ensure that he's able to get the tyres to the optimum on the first push lap, because he is only going to have the opportunity to do that on the next run as he pops himself into the pits for a change.
Well, here is one of the men of the moment. This is Nico Müller, fresh off the back of his 6th place finish, and he improves up into 6th place. Eden Mortara also going up the order as well. Didn't have a good free practice 3 this morning. Technical issue for the Maserati MSG team, and well, not exactly brilliant for them. On the other side of the garage, Max Günther with an absolutely astonishing performance, getting Maserati's first podium here in Rome. Really impressive job from him, and he was absolutely delighted, as were the whole team.
Yeah, they were. Roger Griffiths, team principal, on the left-hand side with Michael Andretti. I don't think his name needs to be sort of explained in the Andretti Formula E team. And as Michael there looking on, this is a big part of what they're pushing, because he's been one of the early investors in Formula E as the team coming through.
Sylvain Filippi for Envision watching on then. Sebastian Buemi, second quickest in this session, with just over 5 minutes now remaining, ready for the last runs to come in this Group B qualifying session here.
Yeah, and you saw Mike Lugg, who's the engineering sort of brain of the Envision team, to the right-hand side, who ex-Red Bull F1. And Lugg has been the one that's sort of been trying to orchestrate the team into the right position to fight for this title.
Don't forget about the Formula E predictor, bottom left-hand side of your screen. You can vote for which of the drivers that make it through to the duels you think are going to do better. Get involved with the conversation. We'd love to hear from you here today in Rome. Meanwhile, here is Pascal Wehrlein in the Porsche. Challenging weekend it's been so far, and his points tally over the last few rounds has not been particularly fortuitous, Alan, especially considering he's very much involved, or was seemingly involved, in the title fight.
Yeah, he was right in the middle of the title fight, but he had that win in Jakarta, and since then he's averaged 4.6 per race, and his main title contenders in the same time period have all been above 15 points per race.
There you go. Just goes to show how your tables can turn, as Hughes back into the Neon McLaren garage. New set of Hankook boots onto his car in preparation for the final run. The only driver that's active out on track at the moment is Pascal Wehrlein, but I imagine that Germany's probably going to come in and do exactly the same strategy in preparation for their final run. Inside the Avalanche Andretti garage, there is the special helmet in homage to Rome here this weekend for Jake Dennis. And Dennis Penny for his thoughts at the moment. Just lost a championship lead to Nick Cassidy yesterday. Still very much within contention, though. Just 6 points drift, just in the black shirt there. That is the man whose team is doing so well, Michael Andretti. Great to see him here this weekend. He was actually in Portland a couple of weeks ago as well, bringing some much loved support and morale to that team in a very critical moment in their championship challenge.
Yeah. It's definitely coming down to the crunch time. We've got this race today and then the double header in London, and the winner takes all. And, you know, as we said, there's 4 drivers in it, and there's 3 teams in the teams title. We can't forget about that as well. That's another battle that's really hotting up, and ultimately only one's going to win.
Well, this is the other Nissan of Norman Nato that is making it into qualifying. Problem for his teammate Sasha Fenestraz. Nato looking for a strong qualifying. 11th he was on the grid for race 1 here yesterday afternoon, the 13th round of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Drivers now back onto track, 2 minutes and 40 seconds remaining of this session as we get ready for these final flying laps to come in. What's it like dealing with the pressure as a driver? You know you've got 1, maybe 2 opportunities to get these lap times in here, Alan.
Well, you've got basically 1 now. It's at this moment in time, you're basically doing the preparation of the tyre and the brakes before you go into the lap itself. The pressure is before the session starts. Now this is their office. This is what they're designed to do. They're born to do it. They've been practicing to do this in the simulator in advance of the race weekend. They've been doing all of these strategies to then get to this point, and now it's about delivery. You can practice all you want, but this is the time when you have to deliver. And that's why I think there's certain drivers that have got the mental power and strength to take their emotions out of it and just to then put it into delivery process.
Well, 4 drivers to make it through from this Group B duels to make it 8 in total as we look forward to the quarterfinals. 2 drivers going head-to-head against one another over the course of 4 different runs. Then they'll progress down to 2 groups of 2 drivers and then 1 group of 2 drivers ready for those finals in the fight for pole.
Tell you, somebody that hasn't got one in the bank, though, is down there in 10th. The person that finished on the podium, Maxi Günther, in the Maserati, and he's well out of the game, so he really needs to deliver. If he's got any mistake at all, he's not going to make it through.
Yeah, it really does have a lot of pressure on his shoulders, fresh off the back of that podium here yesterday. Started down in 8th on the grid, and will be looking forward to try and get that Maserati up the sharp end. He knows it's got pace. Of course, the race yesterday was a bit of an anomaly because it was so depleted in terms of the number of cars that were actually circulating at the checkered flag. 21 started, only 13 finished that race. As we now see the first runs of this final part of Group B coming in. And Sebastian Buemi, personal best for him in the first sector as he rides over the bumps up the rise into turn 7.
Rides over the bumps, he took off there. It was the landing, it was like a motocross.
But not as much as he took off yesterday.
Oh, that's very true, very true. But as he now comes through, he's had a pretty good, he's had his personal best first sector. Not the best overall as Hughes is going slowly. He's gone down the escape road at turn 7. So that means the car going through now, which is, he cannot take a better time. So Muller and also number 7, who is Günther as well. So Günther could be out.
Yeah, so just made a little bit of a mess there at turn 7, and this could cost him really dearly, could it, Maxi Günther?
I think Günther may have a problem here because I think he will have then gone through a yellow flag zone.
Well, let's see what happens as we wait for these lap times then to come in. This is Sebastian Buemi, second quickest currently at the moment. He's already through. The checker flag, though, is out, and drivers are going to be improving. It was the fastest first sector overall for Norman Nato, who's down in 9th place in the Nissan. But here comes Buemi, ready to come across the timing line. What does he do? He goes fastest in the final sector, improves in time, but stays second quickest. Rene Rast, it's not been a particularly brilliant lap for the McLaren driver. Let's see if he can elevate himself up the order. He does, up into 4th place. So he, at the moment, is on the bubble for the duels. So it's the 2 neon McLarens that are going to make it through. But Max Günther through in the final sector as Nico Müller comes to the timing line. What can the Abt Cooper driver do? Stay 7th fastest. Here comes Günther then to the line. Goes 3rd quickest. Knocks out Rene Rast, though his compatriot out in Group B. But Norman Natter with an absolute flyer. He was fastest overall in the first sector. Personal best in Sector 2 and Sector 3. Goes into third quickest, taking that Nissan up the order. But the man of the moment here is Pascal Wehrlein. Had an absolute shocker of a day here yesterday. 10th on the grid is where he lined up, but it's not been a strong lap for the German driver. And he's out of qualifying at the end of Group B. What has gone wrong? It's derailed his title challenge here this weekend for Pascal Wehrlein as Dennis improves at the top of the order as well.
Yeah, and Lotterer as well dropped through. You say about struggling. Wehrlein's down to 8th, Lotterer in 9th. So a very difficult time for the German drivers there. Dennis, Boemi, Nato and Günther, I think they'll be looking just to make sure they didn't take advantage under the yellow flag for Hughes as he's gone wide. Hughes dropped to 6th. He was in the game at one point just before the end and now dropped down to 6th.
Well, nightmare for Neon McLaren then. Both drivers out of qualifying. Hughes going off at turn 7. Let's have another look at that incident. So he's really wide on the entry there. Just almost looked like he locked the rear axle coming into there. Has to do a half-spin turn to get that around. And unfortunately, that is what cost him a possibility of making it through into the duels for round 14 of Formula E here in Rome. Then, of course, we know that Nico Muller's lap was possibly affected by that, and potentially Max Günther as well as Edo Mortara, because they were pretty close at that same point on the circuit. Let's have another look here, Alan.
Yeah, he's just turned in and he was going too quick, so he then just went down the escape road to do a donut.
Let's have a look here at Günther. He had a yellow, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a late yellow, so without doubt there is a yellow, because you now see the green flag saying track is clear again. But the question is, did he lift and slow down? Because ultimately this sector is a long sector, so they look at the mini sectors, which is a much shorter distance, and checking whether that was the case.
Just saw briefly into the garage of Maserati with James Rossiter. Here is Ian James, Neil McLaren, team principal. Penny for his thoughts at the moment. So disappointing their weekend has been so far. Jake Hughes with that huge crash that he had in Group B qualifying here yesterday, putting him out of contention for the race. Wasn't able to take to the start, but recovered in that one to out-qualify his teammate René Rast, 6th and 7th respectively at the end of that session.
And we've got a notice just come up that Rast and Dennis are under investigation for impeding another driver. Whether it's one or each other or a other driver, I don't know.
Well, I don't think that will affect Dennis too much, because his lap was quicker than anybody else's at that point in the session anyway, so he might just get his fastest lap deleted. But either way, at the moment, it's Dennis, Boemi, Nato and Günther who make it through. The remainder of the drivers going no further here for qualifying for round 14. Well, the drivers then gearing themselves up for the quarterfinals. Let's head down, though, to the pit lane with Radzi and the lads to catch up.
Thank you very much. Well, from the championship standing standpoint, it's Jake Dennis through to the duels, Pascal Wehrlein out. And, gents, I don't want to speak too early on this one, but Pascal Wehrlein, 4th in championship standings, 31 points behind Nick Cassidy. Is he now out of the championship hunt?
I wouldn't say he's completely out of it, but he really needs to start performing at some point, because as the guy that's probably the furthest off the lead in the championship, you've got to be scoring the big points, you've got to be starting at the front of the race, you've got to have that aggressive, let's say, attitude, and I'm not seeing that from Pascal at the moment.
And just in terms of that, for you, what does he need to do when it comes to the race?
He needs to score points, of course. He needs to go big, and in my opinion, he's been the least consistent out of the 4 championship contenders.
It is really developing and unfolding here, it has to be said. If he's going to roll the dice of destiny, is he going to have to... He's got an awful lot of work to do to potentially get down to that. But let's find out how the team principal thinks of this one. Who's with Saunders now?
So I'm here with Florian Modlinger. Now, another disappointing qualifying run for Pascal Wehrlein in a very crucial part of the championship. First of all, what do you put the lap down to?
Yeah, a very disappointing result finally. We have to look into it, because in the first run he was on a very good lap. Sector 1, Sector 2 was good. He was on the way to P2, P3, but lost 4 tenths in the last sector. This we need to investigate and check what happened there. In the second run, he was not on the level as in the first run, but improved Sector 3. This means we did not bring the lap together, and this we need to check why.
So given what we know about yesterday's racing, what is achievable from today? Is there still hope for this title, or is it going to be very tight now?
You saw yesterday we have a lot of hazard here. It's a very difficult track and a big challenge for the drivers. A lot can happen here, but it will be clearly difficult from our grid positions and will be a tough day.
Well, we know what Pascal's capable of, but there is going to be a challenge. Let's just touch a bit more about what is going to be needed now from the race.
Yeah, we need to go full attack, also maybe higher risk than we normally would do, but we need to progress and try to squeeze out the maximum we can get.
And strategy-wise, attack mode was very different across the grid here. What will be the game plan? What worked yesterday?
There are different scenarios, but I will not tell now what we prepare for, but you will see different scenarios today, I think.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to throw out
the duels here for round 14 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. And now we've got four groups of 2 drivers ready to go out in this session, including this man here, Dan Ticktum, in only his 5th appearance of the duels in 2023. Looking forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do in that Neo. A brilliant lap right at the end of Group A qualifying. Managed to elevate him up the order. And subsequently, he is going to go head-to-head with Nick Cassidy here in this duel as they both exit pit lane and wind themselves up ready for the lap. And the dejected-looking Pascal Wehrlein out of qualifying once again. 2 races this weekend, 2 qualifying sessions, and both times he does not progress forward to the duels.
Yeah, that's clearly the weakness in the overall package, I would say, on that side of the garage. They struggle with this qualifying, and it's getting to the point that everybody else is so consistent. You can't have a weakness.
Well, here are the quarterfinals then. So it's Dan Ticktum versus Nick Cassidy. It's the 2 Jaguars going head-to-head against one another. Mitch Evans versus Sam Bird, Norman Nato and Sebastian Buemi, and then Max Gunzer and Jake Dennis will go head-to-head. Only 2 groups of drivers will progress forward into the semi-final, and then we'll have the final fight for pole thereafter.
And just a little bit of clarity on something we mentioned in the group stages there. Gunter and Muller are being investigated for not slowing down after the yellow flags, but that will be looked at after the session. Gunter obviously going through and up against Dennis in the final of this.
Dan Ticktum then lining up at the exit of pit lane, waiting for that red light to turn to green, which it does so right on cue. Thanks, Maestro, as we look inside the Neo 333 garage. A little bit of debris there on the circuit as it comes onto it.
It could be a little bit of the hoarding from the side of the circuit, because you know, a few drivers have rubbed up against the wall and dragged off some of the banner.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case, but if there's anything, like you say, I think it is just a bit of an advertising hoarding. There's Sylvain Filippi in the Envision team.
And in the left-hand side, Franz Jung from Envision themselves, and is the chair of the team and a big supporter of the championship, but also of this team, someone that lives and breathes it from the parent company. And that's a very, very big, strong message that Envision have put into Formula E.
Well, Nick Cassidy hasn't necessarily been known for his qualifying performances so far in 2023. It's his first dual appearance actually for 6 races, and he will be hoping to try, of course, to beat Dan Ticktum. But over the course of one lap, we know that just one mistake can cost you very dearly indeed. One lock-up, one time where you run wide at the wrong part of the track, and it can cost you a chance of making it through from the quarterfinals. So it really is a one-and-done sort of lap, and very much the pressure is on for these 2 drivers here as they wind themselves up ready to go.
Yeah, coming down to the long left hand of the obelisk. On the right-hand side is the attack mode and race, and that's what Florian Modlinger was talking about when he was saying about Wehrlein and strategy. And they are trying to think about how they're going to help Wehrlein into it. But right now, our eyes are on Dan Ticktum and whether he can do another startling performance, get him through into the semis. That would be, well, pretty sensational if you ask me.
Well, more power available here in the duels as well. Goes up from 300 to 350 kilowatts. So the cars will be looking that little bit faster out on track, and the drivers will have a little bit more power at their right foot to dispose onto the circuit, as well as we look at Cassidy winding himself up here through the final corner, ready for his flyer.
Yeah, and he went very, very wide into it to maximise his acceleration down the hill. Here we've got split time. It's not exactly perfect, but it shows you roughly where everybody is. And Cassidy, as they drop down, both of them underneath the bridge, going down to turn 4. Basically nothing between the 2.
Yeah, just to keep you up to date with this, they are both out on track at the same time, but it is a slightly delayed feed between the 2. But Cassidy looking like he's getting a bit of an advantage in the early stages of this first sector over Dan Ticktum, and that's increasing ever so as they come through in towards turn 6. This is where the incident unfolded in the race there. Looks like Ticktum's fighting the car that little bit more through that corner.
Yeah, I would expect everybody's fighting the car even on the straight, but a big difference now is they've dropped up into turn 7 and getting into the area of the circuit where I think the envision is very good. The middle sector, all these 90 lefts, 90 right, that's where you need a lot of precision from the front of the car, and then you need a compliance as well, and Ticktum's got more steering angle into the corner as well, suggesting the front isn't quite doing what he needs it to do.
Yeah, Cassidy looking a lot more composed coming through that chicane in particular as they're heading towards the middle sector of the lap. Let's see them through this right-hander again, really nice and smooth. They're slightly hesitant and a bit of oversteer on the exit of 14 into the long left-hander of 15. Slightly oversteering there though for Cassidy on the way in. That might cost him a half a tenth of a second or so, but either way he's got such an advantage now over Dan Ticktum. It increases to over 1 second between these two drivers that it looks like he has got this one pretty much sewn up. He's lost his last 3 quarter-final appearances here, but it doesn't look like he's going to lose this one. Here comes Nick Cassidy round the final corner, across the timing line, followed by Dan Ticktum. It's the Envision Racing Machine and Nick Cassidy, the championship leader, that make it through into the semi-finals here for round 14. Great lap time there for Nick Cassidy, and no surprise at all given his pace this weekend.
No, it was a nice tidy lap from Nick Cassidy. He really started to gain it when he got into the second and third sector, and that's where he pulled away from Ticktum. Ticktum, in all honesty, if he had got through, it would have been not a miracle, but pretty close to, I know we're close to the Vatican City here, but you'd have been definitely having to pray for him.
Well, if you're James Barkley, I would be chewing your fingernails right now. 2 of your Jaguar racing drivers, Mitch Evans and Sam Bird, going head-to-head against one another. You can see there that Mitch Evans has come out on top 3-0 to the British driver. Only one of them can make it through into this one.
Yeah, very much so, but there's only one of them as well that's in championship contention. And so I think there is a clear understanding that Evans is without doubt the favourite in the Jaguar camp for this title attack.
Yeah, I was just about to say they're probably going to deploy some team tactics. We saw that in the battle for pole position. It was the 2 Jaguars going head-to-head against one another yesterday. Bird backed off on his flying lap, gave the advantage there to Mitch Evans, which of course gave him, crucially, the clean side of the grid, but a bit of a snap of oversteer into T1 there.
Yeah, it was a little bit of, I'd say, instability in the rear, a little bit of a push from Evans, though. He knows that he's still got to try and attack, because this is a run for him to actually find out what the balance of the car is under 350 kilowatts, and it's a preparation for anything that could come in ahead.
Just going to say, that'll be exactly the same here for Sam Bird. Of course, bear in mind that car is completely new here today as well, given the fact that it was in about 6 or 7 pieces by the time it came back to the paddock.
6 or 7 or 67?
Well, no, yeah, exactly. It was a bit of an aeroplane crash, wasn't it? There was so much carbon fibre littered over the course of the circuit, but as we said, all drivers emerging from that one okay. So Bird with the initial advantage in the first sector, but you can imagine that Evans is going to quite easily be able to claw this back.
Yeah, but Bird's just extended his advantage, so everything that we've said, clearly Sam's not listening, and he's extended his advantage 1.5 tenths.
Well, let's see what is going to happen then here. Could we be on for an upset, or is Bird going to play the team game and back it off? Slightly wide there, maybe on the exit of 13. What about Mitch Evans as he comes through there? A little bit tidier for the Kiwi.
Equal in the middle sector between the two of them exactly, and so they're just half a tenth apart now as Sam comes through the chicane, drops down to the right-hander before the obelisk.
Yeah, so in towards this middle section of the lap, probably the most distinctive part of this Rome circuit. Nothing to split these 2 Jaguar drivers, and a bit of pitching and rolling there for Bird as he comes through.
Yeah, rear of the car not hanging on quite as much as he'd want as he accelerates out over the line.
Yeah, that's Evans actually, of course, coming over the timeline. 137.9 for him. What is teammate Sam Bird going to do as he threads his way through the final series of corners? Evans now with a 2/10 of a second advantage over his teammate. No surprise at all that we're going to see Mitch Evans progressing through, and Bird there backing right off
he
as he came to the line.
Massively there.
Yep.
And he was 6/10 slower over the final sector, so Sam Bird clearly making sure that his teammate went through.
Playing the team game there is Sam Bird. Makes sense for Jaguar. There's only one driver that's in the title fight for this year. That is Mitch Evans. He did himself no harm at all yesterday with a maximum points haul, fastest lap, pole position, and of course the race victory to boot, his 3rd in a row here in Rome. Let's have a look at some super slow-mos of Evans riding the bumps.
This is where the rear of the car takes off. But you see there, actually, from Evans' point of view, the car actually doesn't. Some of them, the rear is really jumping. So this is now Sam Bird, just as he comes into the final sector. He's got a left, right, and left to go.
And he's going to back off here, so let's have a listen to it coming through the final couple of corners.
This is the last corner. And there's the line on the right-hand side, so 50 metres before the line, lift and coast. Bit of energy saving for the race.
Yeah, just getting his tactics right. Well, quarterfinal 3, they're coming thick and fast here this morning. Norman Nato in the Nissan versus Sebastian Buemi in the Envision Racing machine. So already then on their flying laps as they make their way through onto the left-hander. Out of turn 3, on the run in towards turn 4. Nothing to split these two. No team tactics to come into play here, of course. Bit of a correction there going in towards the right-hander for Buemi. That might have cost him a little bit of time. Half a tenth or so he is down in the first part of the first sector here against Nato.
Yeah, up the hill. This is where the jump is, and Oliver Askew just said to me, if you get to the far right there, the car doesn't jump. Not really sure why people aren't doing that more often, because it's quite clear the car accelerates when the wheels are on the ground.
Well, you need a bit of forward momentum. Buemi beginning to pull it back against Norman Nato, coming through in towards the middle sector. Oh, Buemi's gone off into the wall on his flying lap. That's Buemi's race run then in quarterfinal 3 qualifying. He goes off on the rise into turn 7. We've seen so many drivers make mistakes there this weekend, and the Envision Racing driver is going to go no further than this quarterfinal session. He's handed it on a silver platter to Norman Nato.
Yeah, he's also put himself in a little bit of a compromised position for the race as well, and Sylvain Philippi was sort of because that also compromises the race strategy potentially, or not compromises, but it certainly doesn't help Nick Cassidy as much as they were hoping.
Just check the front wing, I don't want to lose it under the car in case it's damaged.
Yeah, he's talking there, he doesn't want to lose under the car because there's limited spare parts after the carnage of yesterday. And so at that point of view, that he's immediately thinking, which is sharp from Sebastian Buemi, is I need to protect everything that I've got now. This quali's gone anyway, he's not going to make it through. His grid is what it is.
Well, drama then in quarterfinal qualifying as Buemi then comes through ready to take the checkered flag. We already saw Jake Dennis just exiting pit lane ready in preparation for his run against Max Günther in the Maserati. Buemi comes there to take the checkered flag, and he eventually finished nearly 13 seconds adrift following that crash on his flyer, and it is going to be Norman Nato that progresses through in the Nissan. Good job for Nato, nice tidy lap for him with a 1:38.6, certainly not the quickest that we've seen so far this year, but let's have another look at the Buemi incident here, Alan.
Yeah, this is, well, I think Sebastian maybe wants to listen to Oliver here in the jump, but he comes up and it's just at the change of tarmac, locks up the rear, gets a bit of oversteer, and he's going in so quick that it's difficult for him to get out and go down the escape road. And he was too committed to go to the escape road, but ultimately that was it, just nosed it into the barrier.
Well, quarterfinal 4 then, it's a head-to-head between Max Günther for Maserati and Jake Dennis for Avalanche Andretti. You can see they've gone head-to-head a few times this season, 2 in the favour of Günther and 1 in the favour of Jake Dennis. These two were very close in terms of race results here yesterday. Günther with a 3rd place finish, Jake Dennis finishing in 4th. So let's see how this is going to play out as they come through the final sector and wind themselves up for their flyer.
This is going to be quite feisty because I actually think the Maserati is a little bit better in qualifying trim than necessarily the Avalanche and the Maserati in comparison to the Avalanche Andretti. And also Günther has got a bit of fire about him around here, especially after that podium yesterday.
So through into the 3rd corner we go already here with Max Günther driving his way down in towards turn 4. This will become turn 1 for the race here later on this afternoon. Günther looking pretty good through there. Nice traction on the exit of that corner. Coming through towards turn 5 as we ride on board here with Jake Dennis. He's a little bit further back. He's now on the approach down into turn 4. Günther with the initial advantage there in that first sector, but it's still very early days. Still a lot of time for things to change, especially as we get in towards the more technical parts of this lap.
And now this corner is one where you really need to try to thread your way through it coming up towards turn 7. This is where Buemi went off earlier on, and Dennis just catching Günther a little bit quicker, I think, into 3 and 4 at the bottom of the hill. But this is a section of circuit that's going to differentiate the two of them.
Well, this is going to be hugely exciting to see how it plays out between here through turn 12, turn 13 here for Max Günther, looking really good at the moment. These two, of course, have gone toe-to-toe with one another before. We saw them in the final duel at Jakarta. Günther was the man who emerged on top on that occasion. Is he going to be able to do exactly the same here and knock Jake Dennis out of qualifying?
But Dennis has done a very quick middle sector, 3/10 quicker than Günther. As Günther accelerates out, he's only got a few corners to go, but Dennis has definitely got the advantage.
Yeah, he's going to have to hope that Dennis makes a mistake in towards this final sector of the lap. On board we ride here with Günther. Dennis on the bottom right of your picture. Final turn now for Max Günther in the Maserati. Checkered flag awaits the German driver. He comes across the line. I think Dennis is going to have this one in the bag. It looked like it was quite tidy through the final couple of corners. Out of last turn of 19 we go now to the timing line. It's a 38.1 for Jake Dennis. He progresses forward. Max Günther in the Maserati will go no further. Delight for Roger Griffiths, the team principal for the Andretti outfit. James Rossiter there looking on, and Maserati still making it through into the duels.
Mega effort, mate, well done. We're through. Just under 5/10 to Max there, mega effort.
Yeah, really strong there from Jake Dennis. Pressure on him, exactly putting the performance in that he needed to do when it mattered. And he makes his way forward into the semi-finals. Have a look at some super slow-mos as he rides his way over this bumpy Rome circuit. Car looking actually pretty compliant in going through there compared to some of the others that we've seen, but just look at how bumpy it is under that pressure down on the run.
Yeah, just there you see it.
So these are the drivers that make it through then. Cassidy, Evans, Nato and Dennis are going to go head-to-head against one another. There will only be two drivers that progress forwards from the semis into the final as we get ready to see who is going to take pole position. Will it be two in a row for Mitch Evans here this morning ahead of round 14, or will we see a new driver taking to the top of the table? Well, we're just seconds away then, ready to get the semi-finals underway. Let's head down though to Radzi before we get this one ready to go.
Seen the stats of each of these guys, lots of podiums every year, and that's what you need to build up a championship fight. You need to be consistent, you need to be there under pressure, and you can see these guys, that's why they are where they are in the championship. They can deal with that pressure in the heated moments like here in Rome.
How important will qualification be here?
Certainly.
I'll just use your microphone for a second. I think you heard the question there, mate.
Yeah, qualifying is extremely important here. As we saw yesterday, it is difficult to pass. And yeah, I have to say I'm impressed with those top three in the championship standings right now. They're doing what they have to do when the pressure is on in this moment.
At this point, what is it like when you are in a semi-final and you have a performance which is ultimately could go somewhere in determining the race outcome?
I think most of them are happy to be in the semis now. I think that's pretty much a good baseline for all of them. So, you know, everything on top of that now is a bonus. We've seen you don't really want to lead these races either. So I think they're pretty much happy where they are now and already looking almost towards the race.
If we're going to go out and call it here, is Mitch going to do it again?
I think the odds are with him. He has a magic around this place, as we said before, and just so much momentum. He has a very good understanding of what to do, and he has the support from Sam Bird now starting up there.
With that in mind, we can head back to our commentary now of Tom Brooks and Alan McNish.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, chaps. Looking forward to getting the semi-finals underway. It'll be Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy. First out on track just a couple of minutes ago. The momentum, as Oliver was saying just a few moments ago, very much in favour of Mitch Evans, fresh off the back of the perfect round 13 of the championship for him with that pole position, fastest lap and the race victory. Nick Cassidy, though, certainly don't count him out. As I said many times, it only takes just one small error and that can really count it against you. Great to see the fans making their way here in the scorching temperatures though, Alan. Finding some shade is the order of the day.
Yeah, definitely. Umbrellas up, not for the rain, but for the scorchy sunshine that's hitting us at the moment. Air temperature is 33 degrees already, 50 degrees for track temperature there, Tom.
Well, before we get the semi-final duels underway, let's head down to Saunders or will in a few moments' time, but you can see there it's Evans versus Nick Cassidy, Norman Nato and Jake Dennis going head-to-head against one another for these semi-finals. And then, of course, we've got 2 drivers going for pole position here for round 14. Let's head down, though, to Saunders Shelby before we get this one underway and see who he's found in the paddock.
Yes, I'm here with Sam Bird, Jaguar TCS Racing. Now, before this weekend, we'd had to wait, I think, 5 or 6 races to see both of you guys in the duels, and you've done it back-to-back here.
Yeah, we have. Jaguar have given us a really good car this weekend. Obviously, I was up against the King of Rome, and somebody that is obviously fighting for the championship. So, team orders took place, which is absolutely fine. He's fighting for the championship, but I had an important role to play, which was to get him through to the semis, and that was achieved.
Thanks very much, Sam.
Cheers, thank you.
Well, Sam Bird there, playing the team game. You could tell a little bit by the body language, he's understandably a little bit frustrated with that, and no surprise at all. There's
I think he's frustrated generally at the moment. I don't think it's necessary. He understands that, and that's part of the game. That's what you sign up for. But I think he's just generally frustrated that, without doubt, Sam has got the potential for a lot more than actually he has received for many different reasons over the course of this year. And that's the simple fact. It's a build-up and accumulation of, I would say, disappointment through the year.
Yeah, he'll be hoping to just be able to have a strong race, and of course there's a lot of rumours flying around that we could possibly have a new lineup at Jaguar next year. Mitch Evans possibly being joined by the man who he's duelling with here in the semi-finals of Nick Cassidy. An all-New Zealand lineup is what is floating around the paddock here in Rome. Whether that occurs remains to be seen, but it means, of course, that Sam Bird is going to be in the shop window for a number of other outfits for season 10 of Formula E. Just having a look, actually, between Cassidy and Evans. Amazingly, this is their first meeting together in the duels.
Yeah, and we'll find out what happens. You know, they're very, very close in terms of I would say their ultimate performance by what we've seen. However, without doubt, Evans, I think, has got the capability, just have a feeling, to extract a little bit more out, especially in that final sector, as we look at semi-final 1. Both of them running effectively the same powertrain, but with very different ways of working it as well.
Yeah, Cassidy's not actually got as far in the duels at all this year. The last time he was in the semi-finals was in 2022. At London last year, so long time since he's been this far up the order in quali.
Yeah, but it's important for his championship, he does, because he's got to make sure that he gets as many points as possible, and you can't always rely on your ability to fight your way back through the field. There's one day that won't work, but he's put himself in a much better position. And he said to me just before the show, actually, that he was feeling yesterday he had the car and the capability to qualify really well, but he just didn't quite put it together in the first run, and then there was the yellow flags in the second run.
Well, now drivers then winding themselves up for their flyer. Their only flying lap here in the duels. Mitch Evans versus Nick Cassidy, 2 Kiwis going head-to-head against one another. This is going to be really exciting. As I said, you'd imagine the momentum would be with Mitch Evans, but never count out Nick Cassidy. His qualifying performances haven't been so strong over the course of 2023, but we look on board here with Evans on the run, down into the left of 3. Oh, a slight bit of oversteer on the exit of that corner. That's going to cost him. He's going to carry that all the way down into turn 4 now.
Yeah, the rear tyre was giving up a little bit there as he was trying to get the power down 350 kilowatts now, as then he accelerates up the hill, as Cassidy slightly behind on the road, but not behind at all in terms of aggregate that time.
Yeah, just a couple of hundred separating these 2 drivers, ebbing and flowing as they come through the sort of mini sectors towards the end of the first sector. 24.3 for both drivers in the first sector, in favour actually of Nick Cassidy at the moment, but it's in the tight technical sections where we've seen that Jaguar really shine, especially on traction.
Yeah, exactly, at the end, coming out the last bit of oversteer, and that was too quick in for Nick Cassidy there, I think. I think he maybe lost a little bit. Certainly he wasn't able to get the power down. Has it been enough? But at the moment, Evans is 3/10 slower than Nick Cassidy. We have to see exactly where Evans dropped it, but it looks as if Cassidy's a little bit ahead.
So by all means, not perfect laps here for these two drivers. So Cassidy making a slight mistake, but it is going in his favour at the moment against Mitch Evans. Evans is closing that gap down. He knows now, he'll know from the Delta that he needs to have a strong final sector, and he's worming his way through these 90-degree left and right-handed corners before the timing line awaits the championship protagonist. And is he going to be able to haul the leader in the title out of the final corner and across the timeline? What's the time for Evans? It's a 1:38.3. Nick Cassidy, though, looking quick, though, in the final sector. And is he going to be able to upset the apple cart and knock Mitch Evans out of qualifying? Just one corner now remains here for Nick Cassidy as he comes to break the beam. The checkered flag is going to be out for him as he comes over the line. It's a 38 flat for Nick Cassidy. He eliminates Mitch Evans from qualifying. What drama here in the semi-finals. Hugely unexpected.
Yeah, certainly very, very good job by Cassidy. Radio.
Yes,
Sorry.
very good.
Oh, we are.
Very good.
Am I in?
You're through.
Really?
Through. Final.
Oh, man. No. Wow.
Well, he can't believe it, and neither can we here in the commentary box as well. Let's have a look at Nick Cassidy's lap. You can see him riding over the bumps. Made a slight error going into turn 4, but whatever happened to Evans there, must have made a bigger one.
Yeah, he came into turn 4 very, very, very quick. And he locked the rear up, sort of coasted it in. It was a bit more rally style, but managed to get away with it. And in that middle sector, Evans dropped quite a bit of time and just couldn't get it back by the end.
So then it is going to be Norman Nato versus Jake Dennis for semi-final 2. Nissan versus Avalanche Andretti. Dennis has won all of his semi-finals so far this year. It is his 5th one. Nato has lost all of his semi-finals this year, and it's his 3rd one. So contrasting fortunes here for these two drivers.
Yeah, I have to say, I think in terms of capability to perform due to car as much as anything else, then it's not surprising the statistic is in that direction. For Nato to be in a semi-final at the moment, I think is a pretty good statement. We saw that the Nissan's definitely getting better, though, in these type of qualifying scenarios. But Jake Dennis fighting for the title, and he's got that consistency of deliverance that has really impressed me, actually, this year.
Yeah, we saw a couple of weeks ago at Portland, the Nissan's really far up in qualifying. Their qualifying pace has been good. It's the race where they have been struggling. We saw that yesterday with Sasha Fenestras. Great pace in the early stages, but the efficiency of that car wasn't particularly brilliant. No need to worry about that, though, here in qualifying. Semi-final 2, 350 kilowatts, as we look at Norman Nato threading the eye of a needle on the run through turn 6 in towards turn 7. What's Jake Dennis's approach to that corner going to look like as he goes through the fast left-hander, rides the bumps and the compression into the left, looking a little bit tidier through that left there. Nato was a little bit more raggedy coming into that corner.
Yeah, you see that it's very, very consistent steering inputs from Jake Dennis. Maybe not quite as direct and pointy as the Envision or alternatively Jaguar, but it's a very consistent car that he's got there. As Norman Nato now a couple of tenths behind, a little bit slower in both sectors so far. As he now comes in, you see on the bottom right hand, you've now got Dennis there, and on your bottom right, and Nato in the main picture.
So Dennis then on a flyer at the moment, outpacing Norman Nato through into the final sector comes the Frenchman. What is he going to be able to do? He's a couple of tenths of a second shy of Dennis's time at the moment, unless he has a meteoric final sector. He has closed the gap down. It's pretty close between them as it stands for now. Nato goes with a 1:38.2 in towards the final series of corners. This is going to be a lot closer than I anticipated here between Norman Nato and Jake Dennis. Out of the final corner for Dennis, and which way is he going to swing between these two drivers? It's a 38 flat. He just manages to pip the post, and it's going to be the top 2 in the Drivers' Championship of Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis going head-to-head against one another in qualifying. But of course here, Alan, there's 3 points up for grabs, and there's a 5-point difference in the title standings too.
Absolutely. Just to make it even more spicy, they both did identical times, 38.05 for Cassidy, 38.08, 300ths of a second between them. And so it is going to be one heck of a final. But I've got to say, Norman Nato did a very good job there.
Let's have a look here at Jake Dennis. You can see he was really looking confident in that lap. Nice, smooth input on that car, not overdriving it, not pushing it beyond its limits. He seems to get that Avalanche Andretti really, really hooked up when it comes to qualifying. Well, there we are then. The semi-finals are concluded. It is Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis who will go head-to-head against one another in the battle for pole position ahead of round 14 of the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. The top two drivers in the title battle, 3 points on offer, 5 points separating them in the standings. This is going to be crucial for their weekends here so far. As we get ready then for qualifying for the finals, let's head down to Radzi.
Well, thank you. 3 of the top 4 in the championship made the semi-finals. The top 2 of the championship standings have made the final. This is going to be an absolute corker.
It really is, and I think this is where the mental games come into it. I think both of them are happy to be on the front row. I think in terms of the race scenario, there's nothing more they need to do. It's probably a disadvantage to be on pole, but I think the mind game is going to play a role now. I think the one that can get the upper hand here really has a clear statement. It's going to one-up the other.
Can we talk about that first semi-final, Evans versus Cassidy? It turns out Mitch Evans is human. And what has Cassidy done over the course of the last 24 hours?
Clearly, he's done his homework last night. As mentioned earlier, he has that data from the Jaguar-powered car of Mitch Evans. So, yeah, fantastic job by these two. I think they're some of the best under pressure, so it was very cool to see them go up against each other and potentially teammates next year as well.
And to see him do what he did, by the way, to not even make the duels yesterday, he's managed to turn that around today. With that in mind, let's head over to Saunders for some more.
Yes, so here with Mitch Evans here. Now, you've had a good qualifying all weekend. Not as good as yesterday today, but still starting the race from a very good position.
Yeah, I mean, it's still good. Honestly, I've lost some pace compared to FP. Don't know why. Something to look into. Just through the lap seemed a lot harder all of a sudden. So, yeah, obviously full credit to Nick. He was super consistent throughout qualifying and was quicker. But yeah, just a bit weird. All of a sudden, it just felt a lot harder to drive and a lot trickier to put the lap together. But is what it is. Still, I think I'll be 4th. Still a good position to start from, and we go from there.
Well, as we learned yesterday, there's plenty to gain still from that position and even further back. So what's that going to look like to try and achieve that?
Yeah, obviously we have a lap less today, so that changes the strategy a little bit. I think we still need to find some pace if I want to have a good crack at the win today. As I said, I feel like I've lost a little bit, so just, yeah, we need to work out what those changes will be, and hopefully we can make it faster.
Thanks, Mitch.
Cheers.
Well, the drivers then lined up and ready to go ahead of the finals. Jake Dennis versus Nick Cassidy. Well, this is going to be hugely exciting then. So we've had 4 groups of 2 drivers, whittled down to 2 groups of 2 drivers. Now it's 1 group of 2 drivers, and it is the 2 title protagonists. Cassidy leads the standings by 5 points over Jake Dennis, but there are 3 points up for grabs here in this final. And you can see just how fast this Rome circuit is, Alan.
Yeah, coming up through it on 6 into 7, very, very quick. Car dancing around underneath them, even on the straight, sort of straightish sections, they're working at the wheel. So from a driver's point of view, as Mitch Evans was saying, that it's difficult to put the lap together.
Well, the duels final is number 1 and 2 in the championship standings. 24 hours ago, Jake Dennis led Nick Cassidy by 1 point. 24 hours on, Nick Cassidy leads Jake Dennis by 5 points. And Ollie, off air, you made a really good point.
Yes, and like Tom said, this could come down to the end of the championship by just a couple of points. This could prove to be one of the most important final qualifying appearances by these 2 drivers, the 2 championship protagonists.
And with that said, does that mean it's therefore more important for Jake Dennis possibly than Nick Cassidy, who's already got those 5 points?
Yeah, I think, of course, every point you can get here is naturally very important, but I think the bigger point here, is, as I said before, is the mental game. I think if you can one-up your rival in the championship, this is where it comes down to. You've got to stay cool, and everything you can do to put your rival under pressure, it just adds up and builds up. And in the race, obviously, if you can have the upper hand, then it all helps.
There's also the team championships as well to think about. These guys, in terms of Andretti and Envision, they are number 2 and 3 in the Drivers' Championship. And we're seeing here, Ollie, a brilliant lap from Jake Dennis.
Yeah, brilliant lap by Jake. You know, he's a smooth operator, performs very well under pressure, and I have to mention a very good job by Norman Naito. You can only imagine what his teammate might have been able to do, Sasha Fenestraz, without that issue earlier on in qualifying.
And that's the nature of the duels, that we do love the fact that it comes down to fine margins. Could it come down to 1,000th of a second that we have seen before? It's time for the duels final, so we can hand back to our commentary team of Tom Brooks and Alan McNish.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, lads. This is going to be exciting, possibly the most important duel in the history of this format for qualifying. The two title protagonists, Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis, going head-to-head in the final, round 14, the penultimate weekend of the championship. And this is going to be hugely important. Nick Cassidy has a 5-point advantage over Jake Dennis coming into this round. There are 3 points on offer, though, for pole position. So Jake Dennis needs to do everything he can to secure pole.
Yep, the points, and it's going to come down to these individual points for qualifying, for fastest lap, etc. I think that will make the differentiation between who wins and does not win this World Championship. And so it could be a very important qualifying run for both of these. For the grid, for the race itself, yeah, it's not so much. It is all about those actual single points that you're talking about.
Well, here we are then, confirmation. Jake Dennis versus Nick Cassidy. In the predictor, you think that 65% of you think that Nick Cassidy is going to be the driver who takes his first pole position of the 2023 Formula E season.
But I will just remind you, he has been on pole position here before in Rome. Unfortunately, it wasn't the result that he wanted at the end of the race, but he has had a pole position. And so really right now, you've got someone that's definitely got the capability to do it in Nick Cassidy, without question, we know that. But on the other side, you've got Mr. Consistency when it comes to Jake Dennis. It is separated by thousands, there's no question, in my opinion. It is going to be down to the detail.
So, drivers now then winding themselves up for their one and only flying lap here in the final for the duels, on board with Jake Dennis. Heat into the tyres, heat into the brakes. Metronomic consistency he's had in qualifying over the course of 2023.
He certainly has. You talk about heat, though. Track temperature's gone up again. It's now at 52 degrees. Air temperature is now at nearly 34 degrees. So already the circuit is changing from when they've been out before. And I think that is something that they'll also have to just take into account. The tyres are still going to be a little bit hot from their previous run. The circumstances are going to be slightly different.
So through in towards the middle sector of the lap comes Jake Dennis. Here's Nick Cassidy, ready to come through to the final sector. He's away up the road. Nice bit of clear track around him to just get himself in the zone, get himself comfortable and ready for this, possibly the most important lap of the season in the Kiwis' title fight. 5 points the advantage he has, just to remind you, over Jake Dennis in this qualifying, ahead of this qualifying session for the 14th round of the championship.
As Jake Dennis comes into the final corner, wide entry, heavy on the throttle, a straight exit to maximise his acceleration over the line, over the small jump, down to turn two, and an oversteer there already from Dennis. We saw that a little bit yesterday as the rear tyre dug in and slid out.
So easy it's going to be to overdrive over the course of this session. Let's have a look as they come through the first sector and see what it's like. So Nick Cassidy there, a little bit slower by just 19 thousandths of a second, but it's still early days here over the course of this lap. Again, a snap of oversteer through in towards the turn 5 and turn 6 complex for Jake Dennis there. Is that going to cost him just a half a tenth of a second or so? If anything, he's just increasing that advantage here over Nick Cassidy. This is exactly what the Briton needs for his title challenge.
Without doubt he does, but Cassidy's very good in the middle sector and the end sector. Right now, Dennis has definitely got the advantage as Cassidy's through turn 6, coming up to the heavy braking. He threw the car into there in the semis. It looked as if he went in a bit too deep. He was a little bit more circumspect this time and kept it neat and tidy, but he's 1.5 tenths down at the moment.
Yeah, he's losing a little bit of time here in this first sector. He needs to try and gain it back as he comes through in towards the obelisk. Then that's where the attack mode will be activated in the race. No such problems though for now. The full fat 350 kilowatts power output for these two drivers in this final qualifying session. And Cassidy again losing more time here to Jake Dennis. 5 points the advantage he has in the championship. 3 points up for grabs, and it could be reduced down to just 2 points by the end of this lap in just over 1.5 kilometres time, because Jake Dennis is on an absolute scorcher with that Avalanche Andretti coming through in towards the final sector of the lap. Is the British driver. What's he going to be able to do as he breaks the beam, comes to the timing line? It's a 1:37.9. That is incredibly strong for Jake Dennis. Can Nick Cassidy do it? He's catching. There's less than 2 tenths in it between these two drivers in the battle for pole. Cassidy can't do it. 7/100ths of a second away from here this afternoon ahead of round 14 of the championship. 3 points in the bag as well. Absolutely critical. The pressure was on the Briton, and he managed to deliver right when it mattered.
Fantastic lap by Jake Dennis, well prepared by the team. Here's his radio.
Get him, mate, that's Paul.
What a phenomenal performance. Well, sorry for some of the language that you might have heard in the background of the garage there. Clearly, emotions running very high.
Yeah, you see there, Sylvain Philippe there, slightly disappointed, not necessarily because it's second on the grid, but because the gap's closed up, but it was so close between them. It was hundredths of a second in the semis between their best lap times that put them into the finals, and then it was less than a tenth of a second in the final itself. But Jake Dennis, without doubt, deserves the 3 points on this occasion. Very, very good delivery by him and the team. 2 points the margin now as they go into the race itself.
Well, it's his second pole of 2023, and it was right when it mattered. It came right when he needed it to. 3 points, he reduces that deficit to Nick Cassidy at the top of the order, down to just 2 points. What a phenomenal lap for Jake Dennis, as you can see him riding the bumps here in this Avalanche Andretti. And that car really did look strong and composed, as did they both over the course of that. It would be really difficult to tell it from the naked eye between the two there, but Nick Cassidy did a great job, especially in that final sector, because he was nearly 0.3 of a second adrift at one point and really closed that deficit down in the last couple of corners.
Yeah, he certainly did. It wasn't quite enough at the end of it all, but Jake Dennis has delivered all the way through. Mr. Consistency is consistent again. Second pole position, he said, that's 6 points over the season. And those are the important ones that just brings you right into the title fight.
Yeah, needs to try and get as many bonus points as you can over the course of the season for Jake Dennis. And he had 6 bonus points going into this one. And that means he moves up to 9 points in total that he has secured bonus points wise, and you can see what that means for the Drivers' Championship. Nick Cassidy at the top of the order, 171 points, but now Jake Dennis 169, just 2 points adrift. Mitch Evans, Pascal Wehrlein still very much within touching distance, just 20 points the deficit there in the championship fight for the Jaguar TCS racing driver, the winner from round 13 here yesterday. Pascal Wehrlein just dropping off the back of it a little bit. But as Jake Dennis emerges from his Avalanche Andretti, that was absolutely supreme from the Briton. A lot of pressure on his shoulders, and this is surely going to be his best chance at the title in Formula E since his rookie season back in 2021. So makes his way out into Parc Fermé. Nick Cassidy, that is the best qualifying that he has had since London in 2022. Really impressive performance for the Kiwi. He's not known for his qualifying performances. He comes through in the races traditionally, but to get himself up in second on the grid, if he can get a good start away from the lights, it could prove to be the difference. You can see there, though, it wasn't the perfect lap here for the pole sitter.
No, it wasn't. He left a big rubber mark down there as he accelerated over the line. He's a very late apex, got maximum speed here, and there's a little jump there, and look at the oversteer coming in. He just kicks it, brings it back into line, loses maybe a fraction of a second, but ultimately shows how much on the limit Jake Dennis was from the start of the lap to the end of the lap to deliver a 1:37.986 pole position lap.
Well, the heat is on here in Rome, and the heat was certainly on Jake Dennis at the end of that session. But Dennis did deliver. What an absolutely fantastic performance. What a great qualifying session. The dual format really does work incredibly well in Formula E, and it set us up as an absolute treat for the race here this afternoon. We're going to be hearing, though, down from our pole sitter, Jake Dennis. He is with Saunders.
So I'm here with a man on pole, Jake Dennis. What a flying lap that was, and also now narrowed that gap at the top of the championship to just a few points.
Yeah, I know those 3 points are crucial. Yeah, I really needed that against Nick today. You know, obviously, Nick, Mitch and myself were there obviously in the top 3, so it was super tight between all of us. But what a turnaround after yesterday. Like, we really brought the game to Jag today. They definitely had the advantage after yesterday, and we've sort of changed the car overnight. tried something and it seems to have worked. So yeah, bring on the race, and yeah, looking forward to racing against a bunch of Jags. So it's going to be good fun.
Not to jinx it, but history very much in your favour here, because every time you've started from this position, the lowest you finish is second.
I mean, yeah, but if Nick wins, then it's no good. So I need to win the race today, and I'm feeling confident we can do that. The car's feeling strong, and yeah, we're ready to make amends after yesterday's mistake.
Congratulations again. And now to present the Julius Baer pole position trophy, we have Sabina and Chiara from Sapienza Fast Charge Formula Student Team.
Jake Dennis with pole position number 2 of 2023. 3 crucial points in the title battle. Absolutely amazing from Jake Dennis. Can he, though, finish on the top step of the podium come the race for round 14 this afternoon? Well, then we've just about got our breath back from what was possibly the most important qualifying session of the 2023 season so far, Alan.
Yeah, but I do think London's probably going to surpass it, certainly up to date. You know, the points were very important. There's 64 points available of these bonus for pole position and qualifying, and ultimately they could be the difference at the end of the season.
You can see the grid then is Sasha Fenestraz with Roberto Meri on the back row of the grid. It'll be Robin Freins and Nico Muller next up, the two at Cupras right towards the back of the field. Stoffel van Dorn really challenging qualifying for the DS Penske. He will have Andre Lotterer for company alongside. Then Sergio Settori Camera, fresh off the back of a top 10 finish with Pascal Wehrlein, 4th in the championship, down in 15th on the grid. Ahead of him is Lucas de Grassi and René Rast. He'll be really disappointed after he started further up the order yesterday in the 13th round. John-Eric Vernon, Jake Hughes line up 12th and 11th. Inside the top 10 is Antonio Felix da Costa, Eduardo Mortara for Maserati alongside him. Then it's Sebastian Buemi and Dan Ticktum into the duels. Great performance from him in that Neo 333 car. Maxi Gunter and Sam Bird playing the team game for Jaguar, letting his teammate go through into the duels. Mitch Evans will line up on the second row of the grid, but crucially on the dirty side there as well. And then the front row, Nick Cassidy and Jake Dennis, the top 2 in the title. Cassidy leading now by just 2 points over Dennis at the standings ahead of this race this afternoon. It is going to be hugely important and hugely exciting, and definitely, as is always the case, Alan, unpredictable in Formula E.
Yeah, it's going to be unpredictable, no question. But I think it is going to be a very hot race this afternoon. Temperatures in the cockpits will be hot. Temperatures on the track will be very hot. 53 degrees. We're up to 60 degrees is what we're going to expect later on this afternoon, with air about 35, 36. And it sets itself up for a fantastic race, and a race that will maybe start to define who we're really going to be focusing on when we get to London for the final rounds of it. But there's a lot of points still available this afternoon. Who's going to take them? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, your guess is as good as ours. Don't forget to get involved in the conversation online on our Formula E social media channels as well, as we look forward to seeing what is going to happen ahead of the race.
Now I'm joined by the man who will be lining up against Jake Dennis on the front row of the grid. You kept that very interesting indeed.
Yeah, it was interesting, but it was good for us. I think we were strong all quali, so it was quite nice.
So talk to me about the massive shift up in qualifying pace, because this is one of your best qualifying performances of the season.
Yeah, but I think yesterday we had the same performance. We just didn't get to show it with the red flag. So yesterday I really kicked myself for not putting enough on the line in the first run, and it was really crucial because it's the only lap we got. So today I made sure that every lap I did was on the limit. Too much so in the semi-final and the final. They weren't clean enough. They weren't good enough. So yeah, just keep improving.
We've seen you win races multiple times this season from further down the order. How might the strategy and the approach change being on the front row?
Yeah, it's only going to help us. It's only going to give us more options, so it's nice to be starting at the front.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
An example of context being everything. Nick Cassidy, still the championship leader, but looking slightly despondent, having made the final in the duels and just being bettered by a resurgent Jake Dennis. And Kelvin, I mean, let's just talk about that performance. It was, from Jake Dennis, absolutely fantastic in a clutch position.
Yeah, spot on. Maximum pressure you can have as a race driver, going up against your championship rival. You know you have to put the lap together, and he really was inch perfect. There were a couple of moments where we saw both of them struggling with a bit of oversteer. With this heat today, obviously the tyres are taking a big beating, and then towards the end of the lap, both boxes, ironically, next to each other, you could hear the cheers coming from Andretti, and that's just those mind games coming back into play. You can hear the contrast of emotions.
And that's because this is not even the business end of the season. We are at the home straight, and dare I say, encroaching on the finish line now. Every single quali matters so much more, it feels.
Yeah, we listened to Jake in his interview as well. He's absolutely pumping. That's going to give him motivation for the race. And I think both of these guys, and you have to say Mitch Evans as well, are going to be fighting for their lives. You can see both of them on the ragged edge. A couple of degrees hotter today compared to yesterday again. So they really are ragging everything out of it. You can see they left it all on the line today.
How aware are you of when it gets a little bit squirrely and when you are on the edge, just finding that line and not possibly crossing it?
I think that's where driver confidence comes into, just trusting your talent, that if it steps out, you know you can catch the car. And I think both of these guys are absolutely riding on a wave of confidence right now, and you can see that they're probably taking the most risk of everyone out there, and they're confident enough that if something goes wrong, they got the talent to catch it.
Jake Dennis is a really interesting interviewee because sometimes he's quite despondent, as we saw after quali 24 hours ago. That was a different Jake Dennis. That's a confident Jake Dennis, the kind of guy who we see really encroaching not only on the podium, but possibly the top of it.
100%, and you can just see it's again, every moment he has now to play those mind games with Nick Cassidy. You saw on the contrast end of it, Nick Cassidy a little bit despondent, a little bit down after the qualifying. Obviously, he knew how important it was to get the upper hand on Jake, so I want to see how that plays out in the race. Both of them are going to go flat out, and I want to see how much risk they take in combat, you know? I think that's really where it's going to come down to it, and I hope not that there's going to end up in an accident. Obviously, we don't want to see that. But yeah, for the both of them, it's going to be a great show for us as well watching.
Absolutely. Cannot wait for this one. I mean, Nick Cassidy again, he loves pressure, as does, by the way, Mitch Evans, a man who'll be on the second row. So of those top 4 places, 3 will be from the top 4 in the championship. So, I mean, this could not be poised anymore.
It's a perfect setup for a great story. I think Mitch Evans is in a great spot because he can watch his championship rivals fighting up front. He can save his energy early on in the race. So I think he's the guy that can really capitalize should anything go wrong, should the top 2 fight a little bit too much. I think Mitch can still turn this around today.
Well, I have to say, I may have said yesterday that if Mitch Evans were to win again today, I'd present in London in my underpants. I'm a man of my word. Were he to do it, I will present in my underpants. Please, Mitch, possibly help me out here. But in terms of other great performances, we got one from Norman Nato. But first of all, we've got here, Roger Griffiths has just walked into frame here. Roger, how happy are you right now?
Pretty happy. I mean, anytime you sit on the front row of the grid, and in particular, pole position, I mean, that's a great feeling. The Jaguar powertrain has proven to be super strong here this weekend and even in the past, and to be able to go up against such a strong competitor and, you know, 2 drivers in the title fight, battling out for pole. I mean, yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. So very, very happy for Jake. I mean, he's put the work in, you know, after a little bit of a disappointing end to the race yesterday, to come back, make amends, and the 3 points as well is just what we're after.
It's telling that 4th place to Jake Dennis is now disappointing, but just a word to your team. It's been a remarkable 24 hours. To turn it round as you have, you must be very proud.
Yeah, no, I mean, yesterday was frustrating. I mean, honestly, I think we had a 3rd place car. You know, I think realistically, we didn't have the car to win yesterday. Let's see what we can do today, but they worked hard. They understood where we went wrong yesterday in the calculations that we did. We've made amends. We made some small adjustments to the car just to find a little bit more grip. And that was really what Jake's issue was yesterday, not quite having the traction that he wanted. We seem to have found that. We seem to have got the tyre in the right window and being able to keep it in the right window through the duels. So very, very pleased, and all credit to the guys. I mean, they had a long night. They had Andre's car to rebuild as well. Right. So, yeah, very pleased for everyone.
Roger, thank you for keeping it exciting. This race is going to be off the charts, by the way. And obviously, this man's very proud of both drivers, especially Jake Dennis, who's currently with Ollie Askew now.
Jake Dennis, 2nd pole this year. Congratulations. When it counts, you got that extra 3 bonus points. Take us through it.
It wasn't easy though, that's for sure. We have to work hard for this lap. Yeah, by this point, you know, the tyres have done like 3 runs, so they're already completely out of the window before the lap even starts. Turn 1, 2, 3 was pretty optimized, super close to the wall, which I almost hit. It was turn 4 was probably my one mistake on the lap. just braked a little bit too late. You'll see a small correction on the steering wheel now, and that sacrifices me all the way through 5 and 6. Lose about a tenth to the delta, so we turn 6 now. I went full risk just to try and bring it back. Managed to gain about 700ths, and then you just prepare yourself for the big jump.
I want to pause it here. You're probably the most right that I've seen on entry here to turn 7. Is that on purpose?
Well, I don't want to give away my tactics.
Well, quali's over now.
Yeah, quali's over now. I mean, yeah, for me, just with our car setup, it seems to work quite well against the right-hand side of the wall, but Cassidy goes middle. And then Sector 2 is just about no mistakes and just looking after your rear tyres for Sector 3, because there you can lose a lot of lap time. We just about survived it. Here's all about rhythm, trying to get close to the walls, keeping in line, because it's so dusty offline, and then you miss like 2-3 tenths. Chicane, it's much faster this year compared to Gen 2. A lot more minimum speed, a lot more fun, to be honest. Traction there is always a bit of an issue. And then just pick your braking point. Mine's the bus stop sign, get it in down into the apex. Traction again, out to the DHL sign. Turn 15, probably the most challenging corner on the circuit as well. Really difficult to combine, and then you just launch the lock in, trying to get down into the apex. Don't run too wide on the exit. And then use the 150 or 100 meter board for the braking. Again, rhythm, but now your rear tires are just like screaming at you. Like you have no rear grip. And then I saw I was slightly up on Cassidy, exiting 15. I was like, I just need to put this together and we should be good. But in the end, it was only half a temp. So got my head down, trying to minimize distance. And yeah, Sean told me I got pole, and yeah, big turnaround after yesterday, because honestly, we're around about 5 temps off. And to now be in front and starting pole is a big credit to the team.
You mentioned that traction yesterday was your biggest difference to the front runners. Were you able to make changes overnight to help that?
Yeah, exactly. We had to like just try and transform the car. You know, my side of the garage took the risk. Andre kept it as it was, and I felt like it paid dividends. Andre looked pretty quick in FP, so I was contemplating to go back, but we kept it, and we're starting on the front row. So yeah, we just made some adjustments, trying to sort out traction, because those Jaguars are crazy good on traction. It's unbelievable. So the race will be difficult. We're still not quite there yet in terms of that area, but you know, the car's quick and driving relatively well, and hopefully we can win this race.
Relatively well. I think you're driving fantastic.
I know one wants to blown.
Good job, man.
Thank you.
With Jake Dennis, it's often not what he says, but how he says it. A confident Jake Dennis, I think, might be a dangerous Jake Dennis. We're currently joined by Alan McNish. And Alan, as soon as you arrived, the first thing you mentioned was the temperature.
Yep. Definitely, you can feel it coming up off the tarmac more than it was at this time yesterday. It's significantly hotter. The track temperature is over 50 degrees already, and I expect it to be well over 60 by the time we come to the race. Jake was mentioning their difference in setup between Lotterer's car and his car, and I think it could have been relating to where the track temperature was going to give him the extra traction to get the power down in the 350 kilowatt qualifying lap, but also for over the course of the race, because if you can get that power down, you also conserve the energy.
And that just confirmed it, by the way, a 53-degree track temperature, 34-degree air temperature. We are all sweating here, and we'll definitely be sweating when we get closer to the race, which is poised to be a fantastic one. Like we mentioned before, 3 of those top 4 inside the top 3. This is going to be special.
It's going to be special. The race will be slightly shorter than yesterday, 1 lap short, so that probably puts more emphasis on the pole position today for Jake Dennis. I'm very interested to see what his tactics are. Will he want to lead from the front, rather play the defensive role, always cover the inside line, or will he drop back early on, just save that energy early on, and maybe with an attack mode, then go for the overtake? There's a lot of different scenarios that play out here, but obviously with all 3 in the game, you can't really afford to back off too much.
And Alan, off air, you guys were mentioning the fact that it will be a 1 lap shorter than yesterday's race.
Correct.
What difference could that make?
Well, that definitely means from a strategic point of view that they're going to have to play it. I'm thinking more for Pascal Wehrlein, because he needs to do something strategically to get himself back into this championship battle. Hasn't qualified quite so well. He's the outlier, I would have said, in the overall game, and he's got to throw a card there. Florian Mondlinger suggested that they were going to do something different. Look forward to seeing what that is.
In terms of Mitch Evans, what would success look like for him? What does he need to do today to actually be in a realistic hunt?
I think he only really has one option. He needs to beat both of his championship contenders today, but I think he's in a luxurious position. He can wait it out the first couple of laps. I do think that Nick Cassidy is going to have a go early on and really try and make a statement. Both of these guys are fired up. There's a lot of tension. You feel it between the teams. They're right next to each other in the box. There is tension here. Every point counts, and I think this is where you're going to start maybe seeing the odd mistake or two.
we could see mistakes. So are we talking about rolling the dice of destiny? It's not about getting points. It's about really pushing for the win here.
I think you have to push for the win. We're at the crux of the championship now, and you want to go into London with the best advantages you can. You saw how important it was for Dennis to gain the 3 points. There's a point for fastest lap as well. Don't forget that one. And these are going to be, I think, the differentiating factor. Who will be, and we're talking about who will be world champion at the end of the season.
It is as simple as that. We saw Jake Dennis in slow-mo. Will it be him? It is all to play for. 3 protagonists, but who will come out on top? Watch us for race shortly.